Hello, I'm Neil Whelan, and welcome to the Wesleyan podcast. In this episode, brought to you by Wesleyan Financial Services, we look at retirement planning for dentists. In particular, looking at the option of partial retirement versus retiring, then returning to work, and how both options will impact pensions. Back in the interviewing hot seat this time is Monica Pacult, who will be talking to Wesleyan Financial Services Specialist Financial Advisor, Karen Watson-Brown. As always, this podcast is for information only and doesn't constitute financial advice. But I'll be back at the end to tell you how you can get in touch with Wesleyan to find out more. But for now, I'll hand you over to Karen. And first up, Monica.
Hi, Karen, and thank you so much for joining us today on the Wesleyan podcast. Would you be able to tell us a little bit about yourself and your role here at Wesleyan?
Yes, certainly. Thanks for having us, Monica. Right, so I'm Karen Watson-Brown. I have been with Wesleyan Financial Services for just over 7 years, and I've been in the financial industry for about 35. So here at Wesleyan, I provide financial advice to dentists and anybody else who works in the dental environment and their families, and I also provide guidance on the NHS pension scheme. So that can be quite complex for some of our clients.
Definitely. It sounds like you've got a lot of experience there, Karen. Thinking about guidance for NHS pensions, during recent times, we've seen a number of changes in terms of flexible working patterns, and retirement's another area where it appears that an increasing number of dentists are considering a more flexible type of retirement. Two popular options include partial retirement and retire and return. So if we start with partial retirement, could you possibly explain what it is and how a dentist could take partial retirement?
Yes, sure. So partial retirement, it gives somebody the option to gradually transition from full-time work to full-time retirement, because that could be quite a life-changing event. And if somebody's worked for 40 years plus, they might not want to stop working completely. They might want to transition into it. So it usually means that they can continue working after taking their pension benefits, whether it's in the same job or a new role or on reduced hours.
I see.
So if they're a member of the NHS pension scheme, this allows, because they've got to be an active member to use this, this allows them to access the pension, whether it's all or some of it. So it can be from as little as 20% of the pension up to 100%, and continue working in the NHS. So that was only previously available for members of the 2008 and 2015 schemes, but as at October last year, it's been introduced for members of the 1995 scheme as well, which is great because it's those members that are coming up towards retirement age.
Well, that's good.
Right, so as well as extending their retirement options to all members across the schemes now, the offering's been enhanced a little bit. So it means that you can partially retire, you can claim up to 100% of your pension, but you don't have to worry about getting your job back again because you don't actually leave it. Okay,
I see.
That's the main difference between retire and return and partial retirement. There is one thing to be aware of, is that if you do partial retirement, then you've got to reduce your pensionable pay by at least 10%.
What would you say the benefits of partial retirement?
So the main one, as like I mentioned before, was when people retired and returned to work, they took a 24-hour break.
Mm-hmm.
Now, historically, you just took a 24-hour break from Friday to Monday and you came back to work. But now you have to apply for the position if you retire and return. With partial retirement, you don't have to do that. You retain your contract when you partially retire. So it includes, like if you're working as a dentist in a hospital environment, it'll include your seniority payments, any discretionary points that you've built up, which if you did retire and return, you would actually lose those. Also, you maintain your benefits. So while you're accessing your pension from, say, your 95 scheme or your 2008 scheme, you can maintain your benefits in the 2015 pension scheme. So when you come back to work and you start earning again, you can keep contributing to that 2015 pension scheme, which is a great advantage. And that's something that wasn't available before to some members. And the other benefit, as I say, we touched on that at the beginning, is the gradual reduction of working hours. I mean, some people are really happy just to retire and hang up the dental boots and say, that's it, I'm gone. And I've got plenty of things to do. Other people like to do it gradually and kind of transition themselves into it. And you can actually do this by partially retiring twice before you fully retire.
How so? How?
So you can take anything from between 20 and 100% of your pension benefits. So you could take, say, 20% of your pension, and as long as you drop your earnings by at least 10% for the year following retirement, you can continue working. You might do that for a couple of years and you might think, right, okay, I want to take a little bit more pension because I now want to drop another day and I'm going to partially retire again. So you can do that. You can reduce your working conditions again, your working hours, as long as you reduce your income by that 10%. And then you can take another chunk of your pension. So you can do 2 stages and then you can fully retire. So it is really flexible for helping people to gradually readjust to that new work-life balance.
Yeah, it sounds like it really does offer some good advantages for those dentists who, as you say, are not quite ready to step fully away from practicing. Do you see any disadvantages or any challenges?
The challenge is one, reducing your pensionable pay. So when you do partial retirement, you must reduce your pensionable pay by 10%. And that's usually done by reducing your hours. So that's fine if you're an associate and that's agreed within your practice. But if you're a business owner or a practice owner, that's a little bit more difficult because you're going to step away from the business for those days. And do you have somebody else to step in and kind of manage the business for you? It might be difficult if you don't reduce your pay, your pension could be stopped. So
Right, that's worth considering.
yes, so if you start off with good intentions, but you end up throughout the course of the next 12 months, actually your income creeping back up, you could see your restrictions on your pension payments if you increase in that first 12 months. And work-life balance, especially in dentistry, is really difficult at the minute. You know, you might have all these good intentions of stepping away, but patient demand is really high. And it remains high at the minute, so you might feel obliged to kind of like come in a little bit more. So that can be a challenge to deal with, especially when it's patients that you've looked after for a long time as well.
Yeah, that sounds like that could be quite hard to do. Well, thanks. It's always good to get a full balanced picture. And if we think now about retire and return, how does this type of flexible retirement differ from partial retirement? What do you think are the main differences?
Yeah, sure. So if you're not quite ready to step away from work altogether, so your other option is to retire and return. And this allows you to take your full NHS pension and after a short break of 24 hours, return to work. So you can still rejoin the NHS pension scheme. So you would rejoin the 2015 one and you can continue building future benefits. And as I said earlier, it's usually done on a Friday. So you would retire on a Friday, have a 24-hour break, which covers you over part of the weekend, and you come back to work on the Monday. So like partial retirement, retire and return was previously only available to members of the 2008 and the 2015 scheme. But from April last year, those members in the 1995 scheme have also been given the option to do this. You've just got to bear in mind that when you do return to work, you would be contributing to the 2015 scheme. And that has a different scheme age on it.
Mm-hmm.
So the 2015 scheme is based on your normal retirement age of either 67 or 68. whereas the 95 scheme is age 60 and the 2008 is 65.
I see. And do you think there's any advantages or disadvantages to retire and return?
Yes, there is quite a few. So what can we think? Advantages, flexibility. So if you retire and return, it gives you a greater level of flexibility when you choose to come back.
Mm-hmm.
So you can negotiate when you come back and for how long, because if you think about it, some of that financial burden's being taken off you because your income has now been replaced by your pension. So you might decide, right, well, I can come back and I can do 3 days a week and I'll still be earning the same or even more money than I was before. So your family's still provided for and you've got a better work-life balance because you're working less days. Returning to work can obviously provide additional income for later on in your retirement. So as I mentioned, when you return, you would contribute to the 2015 scheme, and that's
Mm-hmm.
not available till normal retirement age of 67 or 68. But while you're working, you can continue to boost that. So that's a great advantage of it. And the other thing as well is by stepping back a little bit, you might choose new career options that you hadn't been able to do otherwise. You might take a step down to do something a little bit different, and you don't necessarily have to worry about that step down in income because you've got your pension to supplement it as well. It might even be where people take up completely different activities or interests, or they might, do some voluntary work or something like that with the spare time.
Or take up a new hobby.
Yes, yeah, absolutely. We saw an awful lot of people during COVID lockdown taking up new hobbies. A lot of people paddleboarding and cycling and things like that. So yes, you could pursue those a little bit more as well.
Yeah, I guess it gives you the chance to sort of have more of a balance between, that work-life balance and explore new avenues.
Yeah, and it does. And from a practice owner's point of view as well, you've probably got a much more engaged member of staff. Because if your associate is now working less days, but they're happier because they've got more free time to do the things they like, they can very well be more productive for the days that they're in.
Definitely, definite advantage there. And do you think, on the flip side, do you think there are any challenges of retire and return?
Yeah, the main thing is that obviously you're going to be earning your income, and now you're going to be getting your pension. So you'll get your earned income taxed at your normal income rate tax bands, but now you've got to remember your pension's added on top of that. So that could actually take you into a higher tax bracket, which could lead to increased taxation. If you decide to retire and return, this is the big difference between partial retirement, where I mentioned before that you partial retirement, you don't give up your contract. With retire and return, you do. So this means that you have to give up your contract, come back to work, and your employer has to agree to allow you back to work. Okay. So if there isn't the need for you, you might
Yeah.
not necessarily get the contract that you want. Also, for dentists working in a hospital environment, it could mean that you lose your valuable seniority payments, or you could lose your discretionary points. You could even be offered something somewhere else that you didn't really want. And then the other challenge is the availability of roles. So whilst in the job market for dentists, that's not something to really worry about because there is such a shortage. However, it might be a little bit more difficult to get the part-time roles that you want, or the locum roles that you want, because they're not always available. So that is just something to consider and negotiate before you actually go ahead with the retire and return.
Oh, thanks, Karen. That's really insightful. And how important would you say it is to seek support from a financial advisor when you're deciding which form of flexible retirement to choose, if that were something you were considering?
Yeah, I would definitely get some form of guidance because partial retirement and retire and return do give you flexible ways of transitioning out of your full-time employment. But the option that you choose ultimately depends on your financial situation, what your career goals are, what your personal aspirations are, how much money you need, and all of that. So it is a big decision, and it's a decision that you need to get right. So it is worth talking to somebody who understands the intricacies of the NHS pension, as it can be quite a complex area, and just, seeking that little bit of extra guidance before you put your forms in and you sign on the dotted line.
And that's our show for this week. Thank you to Monica and Karen. If you are looking for expert financial advice around retirement or any other financial issue, go to wesleyan.co.uk, where you can book a no-obligation appointment with one of our specialist financial advisors. As for finding out about Wesleyan more generally, you can find us on Twitter/X and Facebook, Instagram and LinkedIn. And if you found the podcast useful, you can like and subscribe to us on all the usual platforms, as well as find us on YouTube, where there's a whole library of videos covering a wide range of financial planning topics. But that's it for now. So until next time, thanks for listening.